Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Ironbark Podcast, and I am your host, Epion. We have a decent episode today. I don't know. It's not going to be the greatest. It's not going to be the best. It's going to be decent. It's going to be quite decent. So, what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about primordial. I don't know why I can't say that word ever. Primordial black holes. We're going to talk about some new Nazca lines, and I think that's Peru. What else do I got here for you today? What else? We found woolly rhino remains. Not me, but somebody did. And then a lost biblical tree resurrected from 1,000-year-old mystery seed. So that's kind of interesting. We're going to start with the tree here. I'm going to read you an article from Live Science. So scientists have grown an ancient seed from a cave in the Judean desert into a tree. It could belong to a locally extinct species with medicinal properties mentioned several times in the Bible. Scientists have revived a mysterious 1,000-year-old seed discovered in a Judean desert, and the tree that has grown from it could belong to the lineage mentioned in the Bible, they say. It has taken researchers almost 14 years to grow the tree from the ancient seed, which archaeologists excavated from a cave in the late 1980s, dubbed Sheba. The cryptic specimen now stands around 10 feet or 3 meters tall, meaning scientists can finally describe its fully fledged characteristics. They were also able to perform DNA, chemical, and radiocarbon analysis of the tree, revealing new clues about the origins, according to a study published September 10th in the Journal of Communications Biology. The sheet from which Sheba grew dates between AD 993 and 1202. According to the study, it likely survived from a now extinct population of trees that existed in the southern Levant, a region comprising of modern-day Israel, Palestine, and Jordan, and is the first of its kind found there. So let's see what's it say in the Bible here. Remarkably, researchers say that the fully grown specimen could be the source of biblical tesori. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. A resinous extract associated with healing in Genesis, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. And then we have some quotations here. The identity of the biblical tesori, translated in English as balm, has been open to debate. The researchers wrote in the study the substance is linked with the historical region of Gilead. Which sits in the east of the Jordan River between the Yarmouk River and the northern end of the Dead Sea. Now having revived Sheba, the team thinks she has finally unraveled the mystery behind the biblical tesori. Very interesting stuff. I think that's cool as crap. When you can revive something, plant or animal, from the past, that's as cool as it gets. Like, that's like every kind of Lazarus species you can think of. There's just something, we romanticize stuff about things that have gone extinct, and we've either found them again in some like remote region or whatever like that. Well, bringing back plants or anything from like the permafrost, like a seed, and bringing back like an old tree, like that's to me that's super cool. That's almost as cool as an animal like being brought back. So I think that's definitely worth talking about on this podcast here. Now, here's the even cooler part. If it has medicinal properties, like our cancer treatments are pretty archaic and we rely on chemo, but a lot of people don't realize that like chemo comes from like a very specific tree in a very specific region. And what if this tree has some sort of medicinal property or use, maybe not chemo, but like maybe something that's just better, like maybe it's able to fight cancer or whatever. So you can't sleep on plants like having some sort of benefit for people, and this is why I think biodiversity is so important, especially when it comes to like animals and plants, is because what can the study of their genetics and that stuff's DNA and its properties and its chemical properties, what benefits, what perks does it have for humanity? And this is why we should make sure everything on this planet is thriving, because there could be a very good use for us to increase our longevity or health and our quality of life. And I'm not saying we should like I don't know what, like exploit everything else in the world or all these other species. Obviously you just study it. ethically and that kind of sort of thing. So let's go to the primordial black holes may zoom through our solar system every decade. This is another live science article. I'm kind of falling in love with live science, although it is kind of clickbaity. And this article, it's a cool. Okay, I'm not going to get your hopes up. This is a hypothesis, and those of you already know. But a hypothesis is basically a guess without any sort of evidence or facts or data behind it to support it. To get to that point, that's where you have a theory. And a theory has a lot more kind of like credence to it. It's got a little bit more weight. A hypothesis is just sort of like an idea. So this is, at this point, I would say it's merely a hypothesis, but it's a very good like thought experiment. It's fun. It's one of the fun ones. So I want to talk about it. If there are lots of black holes out there, some of them may surely pass through our backyard every now and then. That's what the article says. I'm going to continue reading here. If microscopic black holes born a fraction of a second after the Big Bang exist, as some researchers suspect, then at least one may fly through our solar system per decade, generating tiny gravitational distortions that scientists can detect, a new study finds. These findings suggest that if astronomers can discover and confirm the existence of such gravitational disruptions, they may be able to solve the mystery behind the nature of dark matter, an unseen material that many researchers suspect makes up about 5/6 of all matter in the cosmos. Many researchers suggest that dark matter may be composed of unknown particles, but no experiment to date has discovered new particles that might be dark matter. As such, one alternative that scientists are exploring to explain dark matter are so-called primordial black holes, ones that have existed since the dawn of time. Previous researchers suggest about 86% of matter in the universe is composed of an essentially invisible substance called dark matter. Scientists infer dark matter's existence from gravitational effects on everyday matter and light, but it currently remains uncertain what it might be made of. Black holes get their name from their immense gravitational pulls, which are so powerful that not even light itself can escape it. If a black hole does not give away its existence, for instance, by ripping apart a star, it may remain undetected against the black of space. Over the decades, astronomers have detected many black holes, from stellar mass black holes, typically about 5 to 10 times the sun's mass, to supermassive black holes millions to billions of solar masses in size. In contrast, the new study examined primordial black holes, which previous research suggests may only be about the mass of a typical asteroid, that is about 110 billion to 110 million billion tons. We're getting into ridiculous numbers now, and there's no way for us to really understand the size of this, so it's kind of almost like irrelevant to say this, but it's like 100 billion to 100 million billion metric tons. Like where do you get a frame of reference for how heavy that is? The black holes we consider in our work are at least 10 billion times lighter than the sun and are barely larger than the size of a hydrogen atom. So, okay, it goes on. Black holes arise when an object is so dense it collapses under the strength of its own gravity. Prior work suggests that shortly after the Big Bang, before the universe expanded greatly in size, random fluctuations in density of matter in the newborn cosmos led some clumps to get dense enough to form black holes. Previous research suggested that primordial black holes that have survived present day could make up all of the dark matter. Based on this work, the new study examined how often primordial black holes might fly through our solar system, and whether they might produce effects that scientists can detect on visible objects. If there are lots of black holes out there, some of them may surely pass through our backyard every now and then. That's one of the researchers, I guess, named Geller. They said that. Originally, the researchers thought about what might happen if a black hole punched through Earth's crust, or passed through our atmosphere, or left a crater on the moon. We even asked ourselves what would happen if one of these tiny black holes hit a human. However, each of these ideas ran into the same problem. A person, the moon, or even the Earth has a very small target in the vastness of space, and the chances of a black hole ever hitting them directly is tiny. Instead, what we needed was a system large enough for black holes to pass by regularly, but precisely measured enough for us to be able to see some effect. That's when we started thinking about the very precisely measured orbits of the objects in our solar system. In principle, a primordial black hole's gravitational pull could produce wobbles in orbits of objects in our solar system that are big enough for us to measure. The scientists ended up focusing on primordial black holes flying through the inner planets of our solar system: Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. They found that if primordial black holes exist, they may be abundant enough for at least one to fly by the inner Earth once per decade. They added that several flybys may have already occurred since technologies capable of detection, such as perturbations, have come online. So basically, I'm gonna stop reading now. I'm just gonna talk. Basically, what they think is that there's these micro-sized black holes the size of meteorites, and in comparison to like a real black hole, it's very small. They could fly through, but they're so dense that they would affect the gravitational or the orbits to some degree, make the stuff wobble like the planets or the moons around them. And if they measure them and they can see these wobbles happening, they could infer that, okay, these things probably do exist. The issue with this is that there's currently no data to support this at all. So, and I'm not even sure they can really measure the wobbles of all the planets or if they're monitoring that at all. So it's like a hypothesis that they have. It's like, oh, there's micro black holes or miniature black holes, whatever you want to call them. And maybe they're flying around like asteroids and stuff like that. And the thought becomes kind of like, okay, that's nice, but if you can't actualize the data and we don't have the way to like really look at the data or obtain the data, like in theory we could develop it, but until there's efforts being made, it's kind of like, oh, okay, it's just a hypothesis. But it's a nice clickbaity article, and it's cool to think about that possibly these things do exist, because who knows, maybe they do. So I'm going to go on to some other stuff that's going on out there. So are you guys familiar with like the Nazca line? So I think there's a place in like Peru where you can only see these. It's basically someone carved them out in the dirt of the ground, and they're massive, like kilometers long. But you can only see them from like the sky, from like an aerial view. So it's interesting that they exist, because it's like, who are they being made for? Or, like, you know, if they couldn't see them, if they had no point of view where they could see them from. But they've used new technology, artificial intelligence, to kind of look at the dirt to see where, I guess, wind has eroded some of them, and it's kind of patched in where some used to be. And now we have like new images generated, not really by AI, but calculated by AI, and it's super cool. I think some depict like human sacrifice. There's all kinds of stuff. I think there's like a llama. There's a llama that's one of them. I think I highly suggest throwing that into the Google machine and checking that out. What else do we got here? We got the woolly rhino. So a 32,400-year-old woolly rhino mummy unearthed in Russia with skin and fur intact. So when I read these kind of things, I immediately think of Colossal Biosciences and their efforts to bring back the woolly mammoth, the dodo, and the thylacine, and to also protect existing species like the white rhino. And we recently, even last week, had, what was it? Was it last week or was it this week? We had International Rhino Day, where, you know, Colossal put out a post saying they're like making efforts, striving to like protect that species that's biologically extinct, because there's only 2 females left. It'd be cool if they got a chance to extract some DNA or RNA. It'd be really cool if they got some RNA from the rhino, because then they could, or the woolly rhino. So then they'd be able to bring potentially that back as well. Super interesting stuff. And like I said, some people are kind of like, oh, you shouldn't be bringing back species that'll, it could destabilize the ecosystems. But if you're not putting these animals into the ecosystems and they're just kind of sitting on like reserves, like wildlife reserves, and they're monitored heavily, they would have very little impact. But genetically being able to study them, and maybe they have some sort of like blood mutation that makes them like immune to cancer, and then we're able to sort of replicate that in a lab, and then we're able to give it to people. Like there's whole like that's pie in the sky wishful thinking, but that's also kind of like the idea of why biology and biodiversity is so important. And one of the best reasons to support bringing extinct animals back to life. Yep. So that's it for the articles. I think right now I'm just going to talk about my weekend. This past weekend I did a hike with a good friend of mine. We went to Lake Louise. We woke up nice and bright and early, drove out there, hit the trails. My one complaint though is they now charge money. You have to take a shuttle there. You can't park there. Well, you can park there, but you got to get there even super earlier because they got rid of all the parking lots. There's like one parking lot now. And now you have to take a shuttle, and the shuttle's like $50. So a park pass is like $100, and then the shuttle is like $50. It's kind of highway robbery. And I was speaking to someone that works there, and they were just like, guys, this is just the way it is now. Like, we're sorry, blah, 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 blah. And I was kind of like, you don't need to be sorry. This isn't your fault. Like, this has nothing to do. But it's kind of like, is this the right answer? Is it the right answer? And it's just like, this is the most popular national park in the world or North America. And I was kind of thinking, well, is it more popular than Yellowstone? I don't know. It's definitely probably the most popular one in Canada. And I was sort of just like I don't know, like you're basically charging me. Like if you were like, I have a national park pass. I go to all of them anyway, so it doesn't matter. So I pay like my $150 and that covers me for the year. But there's people that might only go there once a year, and they're paying like $100 for a park pass, then $50 to go take a shuttle to that location. So basically, you're paying $150 minimum, plus like, who knows, maybe $40 in gas, or depending on where you're driving from. So you're looking at like $200 to do a hike. Like to go walking in the woods, it costs you $200. Does that seem right? Like, it doesn't seem right to me. It doesn't seem like it seems like you should be able to enjoy the outdoors for realistically, it should be accessible. Like now we're kind of like making it so like only a certain class of people can go enjoy the outdoors. And I don't think I agree with that. I think it should be available to everybody. And their whole thing, their defense against that was like, well, there's just too many people. So it has to be limited in some capacity. It's kind of like, okay, I guess that's also true too, because you can't just have in theory, if you were to take it to the limit and literally put like an insane amount of people there to the point where it was just congestion, like even the highways leading to there were completely packed and no cars were moving and the trails were literally shoulder to shoulder. Is that practical too? Like it's not, it's an interesting thing, right? It's an interesting concept. It's kind of like there was a big paradigm shift after the pandemic or even during it, where people got really into the outdoors because it was sort of like the only thing you could really do, even though they had restrictions on that as well. But it became like the preferred thing because it was the thing that it was the last thing to get restrictions on, and it was the first thing to have the restrictions lifted. So a lot of people were doing it, and they saw it as a way to stay healthy and fit, and there's a big emphasis on health and fitness. So all these people bought like camping trailers, camping equipment, bikes, kayaks, all that kind of stuff. And we've seen a lot of businesses shut down. So a lot of recreation that's more city oriented doesn't really exist right now. It's gone under and it hasn't really been replaced. Maybe over time, as new businesses come in and people want to take chances with these types of things. People will have alternatives to going outside, and that being like their recreation of choice. I don't know. Like, I know movie theaters are becoming less and less popular. People just stream it at home. I, for one, even built a movie theater in my basement when I built my house. I just want to watch them at home. You know, a lot of movies go right to streaming, or you can even just pay like a little bit to see it, like it's a movie release, like on demand or whatever. So it becomes really hard to say like what's the right thing here. I don't know. I don't like an over and abundance of people in a place that's supposed to be remote. Like the great outdoors, it's supposed to be less traffic, less congestion, less people. It's supposed to be like, you know, you're escaping the big city. But when the big city comes to the remote wilderness, it's sort of like self-defeating. I'm sure the wildlife aren't fans of it. There's going to be, I always see it. There's always people feeding bears or other wildlife and they're not supposed to. They're getting too close when they're not supposed to. There's people picking flowers, which seems like a harmless thing, but some of these species are rare flowers. They only have a small opportunity to reproduce, and people are, you know, plucking them before or during when they're trying to like reproduce. So it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing. Like, there's a balance, and I guess this is the best way they think they can balance it. I personally don't agree with it at all. The shuttle times are not good. You can't watch a sunset. You can't watch a sunrise. It's expensive. I don't know. This is Parks Canada's best solution, and it's not a great one. It's not great. I think there's a lot of criticisms there. There is a lot, because in a way, they're sort of selling it. They're selling it a bit out to like these shuttle corporations or these businesses that'll eventually at some point will probably monopolize, or it'll be just like two competitors. They'll make sort of competitive rates, and they will agree with each other not to go out beyond them, and you know, they'll have like this like mutual unspoken agreement type of thing, and it'll be at the expense of the consumer or the visitor. And at some point, you know, they say these kind of things are temporary. Oh, it's because it's too busy. If it dies down, it's such a weird dynamic because these places are dependent on tourism dollars, but at the same time, they have too much of a good thing, and they don't know what to do with it. And I don't have an answer. And I spend a lot of time thinking about it because I'm like, there has to be a better alternative. And it's just like, there just isn't. Like, there just isn't. Like, if there's that many people that are just interested in, like, to give you a frame of reference, an absolute frame of reference here, in 2019, when I visited this area, parking was free. It was easy to get a parking space. Not only that, the shuttles were completely optional, and they were like $7, maybe 14, if that. And there was like no people. Now it's like $50 a shuttle ticket. It's mandatory. There is no parking. You got to pay for a park pass, which you need to park inside the park. So it's like you're paying for parking twice. Like it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy how it's just like the Parks Canada's making more money, and I don't know, and it's all being done as a deterrent, but eventually once the deterrent works, they're not going to take that away. And then they'll start doing things like, oh, we're doing free Tuesdays and this and that. It's like, I don't know. I kind of hope to some extent there's a little bit of like a boycott or a pushback to paying all this money. And I feel bad for like the world tourists, like the international tourists that come and like from, you know, further than the States and stuff like that, because they're spending a lot of money on plane tickets to get here. And it's like, okay, and then when you get here, it's like a hand over fist. It's like, I feel like shuttles should be dirt cheap. They should be dirt cheap because there is like what? 200 seats on a shuttle, $50 a person. You know, not only they're paying their insurance for that month, Their fuel for the month, their employees' wages for the month, like are all covered in like one shuttle trip, and there's like multiple a day. Like they're making hand over fist money, and it's like you're certainly making a lot of friggin' profit out of that. And what is the profit going towards? Is it infrastructure? Well, they are building another wildlife bridge, so I'll give them that. But geez, I don't know. If you guys know, like, reach out to me in the DMs and let me know, like, hey, this is the best solution, or this would be a better one. Because I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think of one. Too many people. Not enough. I don't know. I don't even know how to say, like, infrastructure, like parking spaces, like capacity. If it's so like it's crazy to think about, because it's like at the Super Bowl. There's only so many tickets. There's only so many seats. They get priced crazy, thousands of dollars, right? So it really is like a supply and demand type of thing. It's like, how much of the park can you supply versus demand? It's a weird thing to think about, because if you just start thinking about like exponentially scaling up population growth over time, or interest over time, like it doesn't even need to have population growth. You could have the same population, but if interest just grows amongst that population, it still scales exponentially. I'm not sure what the answer is. I really don't. I do not know. I don't know at all. It's food for thought, though. It's interesting. But anyway, the hike was nice. I did the beehive. And then after the beehive, it was a nice little competitive hike with my buddy. We're trying to, keep up with each other and see if we can get a little further ahead. And we're kind of taking the piss out of each other and sort of joking on each other about one being slower than the other at certain points and certain times. Got some really nice pictures. Saw some really nice views. The shuttle was, I don't know. We didn't want to wait for that's the other thing. It's like you sit around waiting for the shuttle to come back, and it's like you either have to race back to make your shuttle in time, or you get there too early, and then you have to and there's nothing there. There's nothing for you to do. Like after you're done your hike, it's kind of no, we just stand around and wait. So we were like, screw it, we'll just walk back down the mountain. So we walked back into the village. We got coffee, which was terrible. I went to this place and I usually like it, but here's the issue with these kind of tourist towns, is you get all these people from Australia, UK, wherever. They're from wherever. They just come here to work as they have their room and board kind of paid for them. It comes out of their paycheck, but they have to work X amount of hours at certain locations. So you have these people working at Leggins coffee shop. It seems like it's a lot of these people's first job, and they just don't care. They're just waiting till the shift's over so they can go hang out with their friends. They don't know how to make a coffee. The coffee was terrible. It was a terrible, terrible coffee. Even my friend's coffee, I had a latte. My buddy had an iced coffee, and it was terrible. It was the worst. It was the worst coffee I've ever had in my life. I couldn't even finish it. It was so disappointing. It was the most disappointing thing I've ever had. Is after a hike, and you're I'm going to grab a coffee for my drive back home. It's a long drive back home. I'm going to take the long way too, because it's a beautiful day out. Maybe I'll see maybe I'll see some stuff along the way. And it was just terrible. I had to throw out the whole thing. The sausage rolls were good though. We both had sausage rolls. Nice little protein in the belly before we pack it after a hike. And I don't know, man. It's disappointing. It's disappointing. It's an outdoors thing. It should be nice. I wish people cared a bit more. I wish, kids worked a bit harder, but they don't care. I don't expect them to care. But it was nice. I had fun. I enjoyed the pictures. I enjoy hiking. We saw a mountain goat. We saw some fish in the lake. Mountain goat was really far away. Kind of cool though. Just chilling up on top of the side of the mountain. And that was about it. Then Sunday, I was recovering my knee. I'm getting old. Undeniably, I am getting very old, I think. My knee was swollen. It hurt to walk. It was just oh no, what have you done? And I still have to feel a bit better now. But I'm still sore. I get sore after hikes. I'm getting way too sore after hikes. I feel I'm taking damage instead of building like strength. Anyway, folks, that's about it. That wraps it up. I'm glad you listened to me. If you want to see some of my pictures from the hike, follow me on social media at Nature's Epyon. Nature's, plural with an S on the end. EPYON. My baloney has a first name. It's EPYON. My baloney has a second name. It's EPYON. Nature's Epyon. It's a stupid name. It's a made up name, but all things are made up and stupid if you think about it. So, give me a follow there. I have some pictures posted. There's definitely some cool ones where the lakes are like mirrors. Very reflective. Very beautiful. Very beautiful. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. I wish it was. I got some top tier beauty in my mind, and I've seen some things. So the standard's very high. Anyway, folks, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Every share, every comment, every like, every follow, every subscription, every click, every second listen, every minute listen, every sometimes hour you listen. I appreciate it. You don't have to. You can find other people to listen to who are much more entertaining, much more knowledgeable, but you choose to listen to me, and I appreciate you for doing that. I may not be the biggest, but I feel like the following I do have, some of you seem pretty dedicated based on the analytics. And I thank you for that. Thank you guys for giving me some of your time, and I hope you get your worth out of it. I hope you don't have what we would call regretted user minutes. Have a good night, everyone. I love you. Take care. Goodbye.